going on, everybody? Welcome to Inter Worldwide. It's a bunch of happy faces, and I'm really happy myself. So I'm just going to jump right into it. This is the final word. We are wrapping up / celebrating matchday 35, if you could say. So I just want to give a huge shout out to our brother and friend Mo, who's not here to join us, who usually hosts this. And our thoughts and prayers are with you in your time of need for your family, my brother. So let's jump straight into our awesome panel. My first guest is returning to Inter Worldwide, and we just had an awesome chat on Cultural Connection. He's the host of Cultural Connection and had the best AM radio show of 2018 for Onside Radio in Miami. He somehow also manages to find the time to studio host for Inter Miami, but we know him best as the host of the Cultural Connection podcast. And welcome back for the first time as Campione d'Italia, Mr. Alex Donno. Thanks for joining me, man.
Grazie mille, my friend. And I'm still, it's been a week since the Scudetto was confirmed. I'm still celebrating. I've been drinking red wine pretty much all day, as long as I haven't been working, enjoying it. You know, we saw Juventus get their teeth knocked in by Milan. So all is well, my friend. I hope you're doing great.
I am doing great. Our next guest is the co-host of that very podcast with Alex. However, you can catch him at his real day job of flipping off the entire Twitter universe 3 times a day. Welcome back to Inter Worldwide, Jerry Mancini.
Thank you for having me, man. Yeah, I'm not on the same level like you guys. I'm celebrating Europa League. That's where the real champions are, buddy.
100%, man. And my final guest that I'm really excited that he's here with me today from Melbourne, it's Mr. Vito Doria, the first Sampdoria fan I've welcomed to Inter Worldwide. He's also a foundational member and regular of the Forza Italian Football podcast. My brother, thank you for joining me. Please spend a minute or so telling the people watching how you became a Sampdoria fan.
Well, thank you, Anthony, for letting me appear on your podcast. We've had a few discussions on trying to get on for quite some time, but we never had the chance. So I'm glad that we finally did it, and now we're on. So that's great. Interesting story about me. This will probably make a few heads shake, and I'm bringing a skeleton out of the closet. My dad's from Calabria, so a lot of people from that region support the big three, and he supported Juve. So I supported Juve for quite a while, but once I heard of Sampdoria, I had a soft spot for them for many years. After 2011, seeing, Sampdoria having some bright spells with Antonio Cassano and Gianpaolo Pazzini in attack, and then, of course, Juventus post-Calciopoli struggled a lot in Europe, I just became disillusioned with Juve. And even with Sampdoria dropping down to Serie B, I thought, I'd rather stick by Samp through thick and thin. My surname is Doria. Might as well support the team that I share a name with than to support Juve, who is strongly associated with the Agnelli family since 1923. And I think this club should be used as a way to promote family pride, because although my family's originally from Calabria and there are a few Dorias throughout southern Italy, like in Sicily and Puglia as well, Doria is a Genovese surname, and the Doria family were a noble family, and they were very prominent in the Middle Ages. So it's a bit of history that's lost. So, I love hearing the Doria chants and all that. And I think with the existence of Sampdoria, it should be a chance for people to get to know the Doria family history and also bring something about the club alive, regardless of how good or bad the results are.
Well said, my G. And to be honest, I wish I could have gotten you on the show at a time where the result wasn't so stretched. So we're going to jump into it and just get that fixture out of the way quick, smart. Inter 5, Sampdoria 1. The champions turn it on. Great to see some rotation. I'll go over to Alex first and then Vito second. Really good to see some of the players that didn't get to play all season get some time on the pitch. And, pretty much I expected a victory, but it was an expansive game, 2 teams with not much to play for. And let's face it, Ranieri is probably the biggest gentleman in Serie A. And to get that guard of honor, you couldn't have asked for a classier act from a classier side, man. So, Alex, what was your thoughts overall on the drubbing 5-1?
Yeah, heading in, I didn't know what to expect because, you can't fake desperation. I mean, for either side. Neither side really had anything to play for. Sampdoria being basically stuck in their spot, and Inter, of course. Sorry, I got a little distracted. I had some noise playing in the background, but I am back now. So no, I really didn't know what to expect. Could it have been a loss, a draw, a narrow victory? But as soon as you see Roberto Gagliardini score a goal, you know that's a great sign for victory because, believe it or not, Inter have won every match he's ever scored in. Now, you don't always get good Gallia, and he tends to thrive against the teams from Genoa. He usually terrorizes, Genoa more so than Samp. But anytime Gagliardini scores a goal, it's usually a great side for Inter. And he also, he assisted on the first Alexis goal. Inter looked like they were having fun out there. I mean, the approach for the last couple of months before the Scudetto had been secured was a lot more pragmatic, right? And obviously that tends to be the Conte approach when you're playing for important results. I think we're reminded from the victory over Samp that Inter have a very talented squad, a very deep squad. And if they play with a little bit more relaxation, they're able to open up the scoring a little bit more. So I thought Gagliardini did very well, specifically in the first half. Hakimi was incredible. I mean, Hakimi went coast to coast, box to box in one instance, and actually got a pretty dangerous shot away. Beautiful save by Audero. Otherwise, it would have been, a goal of the week, goal of the month candidate from Hakimi if he could have finished it. Alexis got another goal, which was wonderful to see. Lautaro got on the score sheet in a penalty kick. I think the one thing, Anthony, that could have made the match really complete and kind of put a bow on the Scudetto season, if Ranocchia had scored on that overhead kick that was actually very well struck. The angle wasn't good, but the overhead kick was very well struck. If he could have found the back of the net on that one, that would have been the perfect bow on a Scudetto season. And also, I should mention Pinamonti scoring was really, really nice as well. And what an assist that was from Barella. Just a perfect chip to Pinamonti. And of course, Pinamonti has seldom played this season. He's been owned by Inter for a number of years, but typically gets loaned out. He's been on the squad the full season, actually scored for the first time with the club, which was very nice to see. So it almost, I can't remember, at least not in the last 12, 13 years, ever being so relaxed watching an Inter match. It really felt like a preseason affair because there was really only good times. The result didn't matter, but it was still an enjoyable watch.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'll go straight over to Vito to talk a little bit about Sampdoria. A decent season for you guys, a slow start, but that's what you can expect with stability like Ranieri. He is going to come in and steer the ship, and you've had a few players that have played quite well this season. It was awesome to see Candreva leading that gentlemanly guard of honor there, and just seeing the respect that our players had for him as well. Textbook in true Inter fashion, it was going to be Keita and Candreva fighting over which one gets to cross the line against their former club. It was always going to be one of those two. But Vito, without talking too much about the game, particularly against Inter, why don't you tell us a little bit from a Sampdoria fan's point of view? How do you see 2020 to 2021? Are you satisfied? Are you happy? And what's the initial thoughts going into next season for you guys, man?
I personally think it was a good season, considering that we had just survived relegation in the previous campaign. I had very low expectations for the team. I was predicting perhaps around a 12th to 16th place finish. Looks like we're probably going to finish around 9th or 10th. And a lot of that is due to Ranieri. I believe that his way of coaching, which encourages teams to be organised and work hard, as well as be defensively solid, I think that was a big part of how he managed to survive. We do rely on the wings a lot, so I think as fantastic as Quagliarella has been for Sampdoria, perhaps Ranieri's wing play hasn't suited him best, but he's had his moments. But I think it's players like Tommaso Augello, the left back, Jacobianto in left midfield, and even Candreva, since arriving from Inter and playing on the right flank, he's been an asset for us. There's also the Danish youngster, Mikkel Damsgaard, who's more comfortable on the left wing, but he can play on the right. He can also play as a trequartista, and he's been a revelation as well. So I think those factors have been crucial to us securing survival for this season. As for next season, there are some doubts in regards to Ranieri's future with the club. I think he wants a greater wage or perhaps more money to spend on the transfer market. But if he does go, what I would like to see is either a coach who will bring a more attack-minded philosophy like Marco Giampaolo did when he was with us, or another coach that will probably play in the 3-5-2 formation like the youth team, who have been doing very well. They're currently leading the Campionato Primavera 1 at the moment. So if the new coach can help integrate those youngsters into the senior squad, I'd probably just be looking for that and either avoiding relegation or hope for another mid-table finish, because at this stage we do not have the resources to challenge for Europa League or even a Conference League spot.
Yeah, and that's going to be the thing with most clubs, man. Just being able to check your financial stability and just really being able to estimate where you sit and how far you can reach and how low you will fall. So I think Sampdoria is looking pretty healthy next season for another mid-table finish. Jerry, I'll go over to you really quickly before we move on to the next result, man, because we haven't spoken to you on the channel in a while. Overall, your impression of Inter as 2020 champions, man. Worthy, lucky, just give it a little bit.
I don't think they're lucky. I think they were good, worthy, man. Like, if you're a Juve fan, you're the guy who's going to be saying, "Oh, they got lucky. They were fortunate that Pirlo came in." And here's another thing: they beat a Juventus side who was poorly managed by Pirlo. Guess what? At the end of the day, you fucking shit the bed, and that's your problem. Like, it's that simple, man. Like, I hate when I have to hear that Inter won a lousy Scudetto that had no competition and they weren't good enough. They were just lucky that everything went their way. You said in the pod previous, they have 2 losses this season. 2 losses. One came to Sampdoria and the other, I forgot who it was. Oh, Milan. That was a fortunate loss because there's so many players that were missing from the lineup and you had to start Kolarov in the back end. That was the one game that Kolarov will always be remembered of, his long pass that he set up that beautiful goal. But you know what? It's Conte's season. He adapted and was learning to not be stubborn as the season progressed. He brought Eriksen back into the lineup. He got Skriniar to adjust to a back 3. He's got Lukaku, who's the guy that I mentioned on a tweet this past week? The English guy who called him out and said that he was fat and slow and couldn't hack it when he was with United.
I think that was every English guy.
I forgot who it was. He was the guy who called out the Super League as well last weekend or 2 weeks ago.
Oh, Gary Neville.
That's it. Gary Neville was so critical of Lukaku, but look what Conte's done. Like, everything's worked out well. Like, okay, fine, it didn't work out in the Champions League, but they didn't tank it. I'll say it 100 times. They didn't tank it. Maybe there's conspiracy that people think that Conte would never tank to lose, okay? Conte goes all out to win no matter what. Yeah, maybe he's not the best at coordinating 3 competitions, but I think that this is the manager who had his mindset first to win the Scudetto. And I think next year he will prioritize and probably manage better 3 competitions, knowing that he's already accomplished what he had to. The team has been so competitive, man. Like, the second half of the year, they've been the best team. Who's been able to go toe-to-toe with Inter? Napoli, maybe. That was a pretty convincing game, but again, Samir Handanovic is another issue with Inter, and that was probably why they lost points to Spezia and to Napoli. And luckily yesterday nothing really mattered, or else his gift could have changed everything if Inter was in a position to battle for a Scudetto, because the game's 2-1 and all of a sudden the momentum could have switched and Sampdoria maybe would have applied the pressure more if the game meant more for both sides, right? So I think that's the one area. If I have to look back at their season, it's the goalkeeping situation now. That is the one area where they really need to address. And I know that Nima has mentioned that there's not enough funds. I've seen him tweet about that. Like, there's going to be a lot of financial issues this summer. You go with Radu. You got a backup goalkeeper who's proven to do a decent job on loan in past seasons. I think this guy deserves at least the last 2 or 3 games of a start to prove what he can offer. You know what I mean? You start him against a Roma side that's not entirely bad, but not good either. So you see what you can do there. Do you start him against Juventus? I don't know. I
I'm all
personally think.
for. I'm all for giving him minutes until the end of the season. I do, however, think he's about to be used as bait for a transfer. I do think he's about to be used as bait, whether it's for Musso or Cranio or anybody else. I think Radu is going to be used as bait. I'm not too sure about that, but we'll go on to some of the other results in a week where I think 3 sides found the back of the net 5 times. We'll go on to Atalanta 5-2 against Parma. Another Malinowski masterclass. I swear he just might have the most ferocious boot in Serie A, to be honest. Atalanta, they hold up their end of the top 4 bargain. Probably the most likely side to finish in 2nd position, but it's so close. Seeing that table change pretty much by the hour mark is really exciting from a neutral Campione perspective. But let's just go straight to where we think Atalanta is going to all finish this season. So I'll go around. Alex, start first. Atalanta 5-2, piling on the goals. Not too much to worry about in terms of their season. Milan coming up as a last game in matchday 38. Your thoughts on where Atalanta is going to finish, mate?
I think they're going to beat Milan or draw it worse, and I think they're going to finish 2nd. And Atalanta deserves it, quite frankly. I mean, they do this typical Atalanta thing where they're always shaky for the first 6 weeks or so of a season. Like, you notice they do that every year where they don't tend to hit their form until winter time, and then they usually carry it. But it's like every season we have this conversation, the Cinderella story, is it over? Now Atalanta have been in Champions League for 2 straight years, is playing in the extra competition too much for them. And I'm not a big Gasperini fan personally. I know Jerry isn't, and Anthony probably isn't as well. Vito might be a little bit more of a neutral on that, but I can't deny the work that he's done. I'm getting the head shake, so no, he's not a huge fan of him either. But as a manager, listen, I have the respect for his tactics, his system, and it's almost gotten to the point where they've done a great job, of course, scouting players, and the academy at Atalanta has really been like a great cash factory for them. It's really helped them operate kind of a sustainable project in recent years, but it almost doesn't really seem to matter who's in the lineup for Gasp at any given day. You're going to get similar results. You're going to get a lot of goals. So I think they're deserving of 2nd place, and I think they're going to get it, quite frankly.
Fair enough. I got to go to Vito for this one. What awaits Parma? Relegated, Serie B next season. You're a good one to ask this question to, man. What can we expect from Parma after this season?
Well, it sounds like the owner, Kyle Kraus, is going to stick with them. There has been some talk that he has agreed with the local council to refurbish the Tardini and own that stadium. So if that somehow manages to go ahead, that would be a fantastic plus for them. As for the squad, I just think they need to clean out a lot of the veterans they have there. Guys like Gervinho and Bruno Alves, I think it's time for them to go. Even if we look at some of the slightly younger players like Luigi Seppe, look, solid goalkeeper, but he's prone to his share of errors. And they do have some bright youngsters, especially the Romanian kids like Dennis Mann and Valentin Mihaila. I think they deserve some time in Serie A. So I hope they don't go to Serie B with Parma. As for the rest of the team, they need to assess what kind of players would help them get back into Serie A, and also if the new coach is able to work with what's there at the moment. I just felt that with the team that they've had over the last 3 to 4 years, they were coached under D'Aversa. His 4-3-3 was ingrained into that team from Serie C all the way up to Serie A. Even once they brought in Fabio Liverani from Lecce early in the campaign, he wasn't able to change things up. So they went back to D'Aversa, and now they have to rebuild themselves. And hopefully with Kraus, he can invest a bit in the squad, be able to bring them back into Serie A, and then be able to put up a greater fight for survival if they do return for the 2022-23 season.
Yeah, fair enough. Thanks for that one, boys. I'm going to move on right to the next fixture, which was another side that grabbed 5 goals, and it's gone straight to Jerry for this one. For his rival side, Roma, 5-0 over Crotone. Jerry, I'm going to come to you first. Mourinho vibes settling in early at Roma, although I don't think they're ever going to score 5 goals under that guy when he gets to the country, man. But we'll see what happens there. Yeah. Sorry?
In 5 games, they'll score 5 goals.
100%, man. That's a more accurate one. Jerry, feel free to express yourself as naturally on this channel. Maybe leave out a few of the words you mentioned in Cultural Connection the first time. But overall, how do you think Mourinho is going to go at Roma, man? Because there's no point talking about Roma this season. They've been tattooed to that 7th position for as long as I can remember now. So, yeah, what's going to happen next season, man? How's it going to go? Because it's a real curious case.
It is, and if everybody thinks that Mourinho's coming in and they're allowing him to spend money, you guys can fucking think elsewise, because he's not going to be spending $200 million and bringing all these players that he wants in. There's dead weight at this team. I said it on the previous pod. Dzeko, I get it. He was a good player. Guy was sitting on the bench versus Crotone today for a reason. Okay, he's no longer the player he once was. Borca Mayoral was really decent against Crotone, but at the Crotone side, which is shit, and couldn't even finish their chances that their life depended on it. There's just a lot of weight that's dead. Santon, that guy's fucking terrible. He's
not good.
Atrocious. How much did they cost? I don't even know how much they pay for these guys. I heard that
Santon was part of the Nangolan package that was sent over with Zaniolo. We ended up paying, I think it was either 35 or almost 40 million. No, I think it was about 35 million plus Santon and Zaniolo. So
it was.
I'd like to think there was no winners in this deal. This was a bad deal for all parties.
I think the total valuation for Nangolan was 38 mil, and I think we gave Roma Zaniolo, Santon plus 22 mil. I think it
22,
was
22. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. There were no real winners in that deal, Jerry. So.
Yeah, like I don't know their whole there's Pastore and then people call me out. Pastore was great at PSG and somewhere else, and it's like, yeah, you can't look at what he was 5 years ago. The guy came to Roma. He's got significant wages, I believe, and that's another thing. Not only did they pay a lot of money for these guys, they pay a lot of wages on top. Juan Jesus, the guy actually played today. Like, came in the second half. He started. They picked up an injury. I forgot who got injured in the back end, but someone came out and he came in. That guy's from the dead. How much did that guy cost? I'm pretty sure that
you saying these names to me now. I'm sorry to interrupt, but these are the names that gave us PTSD, Alex. Your Juan Jesus and your Davide Santon, and you're telling me they're still on the front line for Roma. Not good, bro.
That's a big problem.
And I guarantee Vito will be the first guy to agree. The question is not who can they buy, it's who can they sell. Like, and you're taking a big loss on these guys now. Like, can you afford to sell these guys and take a 50% cut loss? Like, whatever, how the business is done. Like, they're not going to make a profit on any of these players. Maybe Pellegrini, if they decide to sell Pellegrini. Jordan Veretout, you can make money on. But look. The players that they can make a profit off, it's hurting their future. Like, I don't know where this team begins in order to rebuild. Like, there's got to be something. It's scary for Roma, man. If you were to ask me, like, you don't have a true number 9 up front. Mariel is on loan. I don't know what his contract if it's an option. Like I said, Dzeko aging, Zaniolo. You don't know if he's going to come back the same player. Like, he keeps on postponing his return. That kind of scares me because, like, there's always a setback and not wanting to rush to come back. So that kind of it's a little really worrying there. Like, I think people need to understand, like, he was supposed to play in the Euros. He's not playing in the Euros this summer. So that's a flag there. Like, is there something that he needs to be careful? One more injury for that guy, and I think it's lights out, man. It's never going to be the same for him again. Again, the midfield. Okay, you got Veretout. But what about after that? Cristante, garbage. Guy's a walking disaster. Okay, guys.
It's a bad squad. It's a bad-looking squad, man. It's not good.
Spinazzola is probably one of their best players, I guess.
But he's always going to pull up injured. Like, he was the only one doing anything against Manchester United in the Europa League, and then he pulls up at, like, minuti 25 or 30 or something, man. It's not a good look. But anyway, let's go over to Vito just quickly to wrap up the Roma discussion. Vito, how do you see Roma going into next season with Mourinho? Any sort of expectations? You think they'll gun for top 4?
I think it's possible. And as I was discussing on the Forza Italian Football podcast earlier, the football is definitely going to be boring to watch. With Mourinho, they're going to be dour. That's what you're going to get. This is the first time they've had a true pragmatist as a coach since Fabio Capello about 20 years ago. And Serie A being the tactical league it is, I think Mourinho's approach would be better accepted. And I think he's got the ability to at least tighten the defence. If they do concede less, that's a totally different matter. But I think just his presence in the league would be exciting to see. He's at least a draw card. Anything that comes out of his mouth will be a case of any publicity is good publicity. And for the squad itself, if they buy into his way, especially his pragmatism, his siege mentality, he might be able to do something. But in terms of wheeling and dealing on the transfer market, as Jerry pointed out, I think maybe Virtu is probably the only person they could really sell for a profit. A guy like Lorenzo Pellegrini being a Romanista, I don't think they'll get rid of him. And let's say Juve, they decide to rebuild the squad and they look at Zaniolo and take a risk on him. They might get him at a bargain, but there's still the chance of him still being injury prone. And from a Roma perspective, they're definitely not going to get the 40 million that they would have reportedly wanted prior to Zaniolo's knee injuries and prior to COVID.
Yeah, very well said, man. Very well said. All right, moving on, doing well. Spezia 1, Napoli 4. I saw Vito say in our podcast on Calcio Connection before, Il Stone called Gattuso. We all should stand with Gattuso. We're all with Gattuso. Look at this guy go. There should be no discussion about him exiting the door at Napoli. So, Alex Donno, you first. 4-1, Osimhen steps up to the plate, as he always was going to be. I mean, he's an absolute beast. He's going to excel anywhere that he goes. But Gattuso, Napoli were flirting with second position at one point throughout the evening. He's got to stay, right, Alex? Man, how in this time of COVID and inconsistency do you ship out a guy who can motivate like this? Because they've had some injuries this season, man. And, you know, albeit with another couple of results go their way, they could have been our closest challengers.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Osimhen, what a player. I mean, he's had a lot of bad luck this season with injuries and with COVID. So, you know, I know that a lot of people have been bantering him. Oh, look at how much money they paid for Osimhen. But no, now that he's been healthy in recent weeks, he's showing you what kind of a player he is. And if he can avoid the injury bug next year, Napoli can compete for a Scudetto, I believe. And I believe that that is also contingent on Gattuso staying. He's really impressed me at Napoli. You know, obviously he had certain issues at Milan, which I think maybe were more Milan issues than they were Gattuso issues. You know, I can remember a lot of Milanisti not being too upset about him making way for what was Gianpaolo. For Gianpaolo was an absolute dumpster fire at Milan, and maybe they realized Gattuso was not such an issue after all. And admittedly, when Gattuso first got appointed at Napoli after the Ancelotti sacking, I thought, I don't know about this move, but he has really gone out of his way to show how adaptable he can be, what a professional he is. And honestly, you know, obviously, you know, Napoli, I believe they're going to be a Champions League team. They didn't compete for the Scudetto the way some people, myself included, expect that they would when the season started. But I don't believe you can hold that against Gattuso, because this is one of the teams that really had problems keeping their players consistently healthy, COVID-free, and injury-free. So I really see no reason to discontinue that project under Rino Gattuso. And I just, for the sake of Napoli and for his sake, I hope he sticks around next year.
Absolutely. Jerry, over to you next to echo the thoughts of Alex when it comes to Gattuso, man, because, you know, there doesn't seem to be a justifiable reason for him to be shown the door.
Well, it all depends on what the relationship with ADL is, and we're never going to know the truth. Media says 1 week it's bad, and next week they say it's good now because he's winning. I think that's the decisive factor. Fiorentina is coming in the back scenes trying to come with a deal for Gattuso, and I can see him going to Fiorentina if they promise him what he wants and he's committed to the project of what they want to do long term. I know that it would suck that he doesn't get to continue with Champions League and direct them into next season, but I think the bigger issue is if he goes, this is a big step back for Napoli. I think a lot of people don't understand. Yeah, Spalletti comes in, he brings that experience. I understand what he did with Inter, but you got before you had Sarri, from Sarri you had Ancelotti, from Ancelotti you have Gattuso now. From Gattuso could be to Spalletti. That's 4 managers in the span of 4 years. That is not good because you got no continuity. That's where you need to start building a long-term project. Going from manager to manager is not a good idea. Look at Inter. They stuck 2 years with Conte and will most likely be a third season. A lot of people will probably say they should get rid of him. Some people will say stay with him. I think the right decision is to stay with him because you need to build something long-term. These players need a foundation. They need a building block. You can't have players flip-flopping from one manager to another. The ideology doesn't set in. You got players confused. Do you play a 3-5-2? Do you play a 4-4-2? Do you play whatever it may be, a 4-3-3, and then you have different ideas and everything, and it kind of confused players, and there's no set plan. And with, like, for instance, Lazio, I think that's what's really helped their core, being under a manager for 5 years and understanding what he's wanted and been able to mold into that long-term game plan. Look at Milan. Milan's gone through so many coaches, and luckily now it's starting to work out with Pioli. Do you jump off with Pioli? It's the same situation. But in regards to Napoli, if he goes, it can go really spiral for Napoli next year. I think this team's built for Champions League. I think they're much better than in Atalanta, me personally, just of what the talent they do have. And I think this is a team that hasn't been able to test their depth this season with the amount of injuries they've had and COVID and everything. But it's interesting to see what the new manager does. And the biggest question is, do the players buy into what he wants? Because the players are buying into what Gattuso wants. And Gattuso has earned the respect of his players, and it's the vice versa. That all has to be earned now next season all over again. And it can be a long-term thing that has to build throughout the year, and it can really set them back of how they progress and how they develop and kind of molding into what they want, like I said. So it's the big decision, and it's one that if Gattuso doesn't stay, I think it can hurt them.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Moving on to one of the more high-profile fixtures of the match day, despite their positions on the ladder. Benevento 1, Cagliari 3. Huge 3 points for Cagliari, the ultimate resurrectors of their season. They looked gone for all money at some point, but Benevento are in a lot of trouble now, especially considering they play Atalanta next week. And, you know, by the time that they get to their fixture against Crotone, which looks like the most likely fixture that Benevento can get to save themselves in Serie A, it actually might be too little too late for them. Vito, as the season's gone on, did you kind of think Benevento were going to regress into that 18th, 19th position? Or are you sad to see Pippo Inzaghi's hair still go from a nice shade of darkish black to pretty like the silver on my car on a dirty day in Sydney now, man? He looks hella stressed. He's not happy. But well done for Cagliari for digging themselves out of that hole, man. So overall, your thoughts on those two sides, and who do you think is going to survive the drop?
I was a bit surprised with Benevento's drop in the second half of the season because they looked really promising. The president, Oreste Vigorito, he invested a good amount into the squad to make sure that they would stay in Serie A, and I thought Inzaghi was doing a good enough job to make sure that they had some continuity and they were able to get some results. The second half of the season, they haven't been able to do that. And, man, they look like they're going straight down to Serie B, which is a shame because last season they really dominated in the Cadetti. And with some of the players they got, I think they should be in a position where they are surviving relegation. As for Cagliari, they looked like they were as good as gone. I thought it was really bizarre that they gave Eusebio Di Francesco a contract extension despite some really bad results, and then they decided to sack him. But I think the choice in replacement, Leonardo Semplici, is fantastic. He did great things at Spal. He got them from Serie C to Serie A. Wasn't able to help them survive last season, but I thought his best assets on the pitch had gone, so that did not help his cause. At Cagliari, he's got more resources to work with. It's a stronger squad than what he had with the Biancazzurri, and they're very well organised. They can move the ball around pretty well. They're not just a team that's defensively solid. And I reckon Cagliari, they're going to be safe. And come next season, I think they should be at least mid-table.
Yeah, fair enough, man. I'll go over to Alex for another minute or so on that sort of topic. What do you think of Sassuolo? That's the next game we're going to talk about. Benevento failing in that second half of the season after looking promising, like Vito said, and Cagliari with the great escape after sacking Di Francesco.
Yeah, well, for Benevento, I think it's a shame because, like Vito mentioned, they were so strong in Serie B last year. They were setting records. I don't follow Serie B as closely as I should, but when they were promoted, I really thought, okay, this is a team that is building something sustainable enough to stay in the top flight for a couple of years because they really had an incredible run a season ago. And it's also a shame to see them likely going down because there aren't enough Southern Italian teams in Serie A. I'd love to have just more of a geographical balance and, not have it, even though, hey, I cheer for a Northern Italian team and that's where my father is from. I would love to have the geographical balance and I'd love to see the South represented better than it usually is. As far as Cagliari, it's just that team's too good to get relegated. So I'm happy to see them save themselves. I mean, the bottom line, Anthony, I don't want to see anybody get sent, except for Chievo Verona. I didn't mind seeing them get sent down a couple of years ago, but normally I don't want to see anyone get relegated. So it's tough.
Fair enough. There's a couple of fixtures that we don't need to touch on too much. There's just a couple of points that from both of them combined that we might as well talk about. I'll stick with you, Alex. Genoa 1, Sassuolo 2. Never mind the result, the mid-table result. I started reading some headlines a few hours ago that De Zerbi is very keen on becoming the next manager at Shakhtar Donetsk. Now, I'm not too sure if you've read those headlines, and I'm not too sure if anybody else heard them. So if that was to happen, what would be your overall thoughts on a manager like De Zerbi making the move? Because the opinion's sort of mixed online. Some people saying that, why would he make it the jump to a club like that? Most of those fans probably don't know the pedigree and the history behind Shakhtar Donetsk and how much European experience they have. So for a manager like De Zerbi, going to a club like Shakhtar that plays almost Joga Bonito Samba-style football, I think De Zerbi would love to fit that glove for a little bit. It's almost like the perfect stepping stone before having to make that silly jump from a team like Sassuolo to a team like Milan or anybody else or Juventus or anybody up in Serie A, where it would just kill your career before it began again properly. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree 100%. And to anyone who is like frowning on that move as if it's, a lateral move or a step down, it's definitely a step up because Shakhtar have a very rich European history. And I thought you hit the nail on the head as far as the style of football. I mean, I honestly, when you first said it, I had a bit of a shock because I hadn't heard that rumor. So I had a bit of a shock the same way I'm sure a lot of people online did. Like, wait, Shakhtar Donetsk? But no, the more that I think about it, the more that could make some sense to me. So I would be keen to see how that plays out over the next few weeks.
100%. Vito, thoughts on that before I go over to Jerry?
Yeah, absolutely agree with what's been said. With the Brazilian contingent that's been there over the years, they do have a great share of technical players that are able to thrive at that club. A manager like De Zerbi is attack-minded, so I think to go to that club, he'll have probably some better resources to work with or players who could embrace his philosophy a lot more. Not only that, like one of the commenters has said, he'll be able to coach in a European competition. And I think a coach like him deserves to be coaching in the Champions League or even the Europa League, because I think his work deserves to be reaching a wider audience and be exposed to more football fans.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys, for talking about all these topics pretty much on cue. I haven't really given you guys a schedule. I'm just going around and giving you whatever from any game. It's great. If you're a part of the 11 people watching the video, don't forget to like the video. It helps a lot. Jerry, I've been waiting for this one. You have the floor, bro. Fiorentina 2, Lazio 0. As I said before the video, you had one job for fans like myself and Alex, and that was to keep the pressure on both Milan and Juve so they could both miss out on Champions League. But sorry from Jerry and sorry from all of us. It was a real banter era Inter performance for me, that one, man. So off you go, man.
Well, I don't think that it's Lazio that's not consistent to answer not biggie, but they're going into yesterday's match. They earned the second most points since the calendar year. Okay, and I think the biggest issue that yesterday was starting Lazzari, who had a fever, and Luis Alberto, who's not 100% fit. And I won't use excuses to hear this depth issue that Lazio doesn't have players to call upon. You have 3 games in a week. This is a game maybe you should have elected to bench Alberto and go to Pereira. And I know he wasn't great off the bench, but players react differently as a starter and off the bench. 2 different roles, 2 different situations. Give credit to Fiorentina. They sat back and they played on the counterattack. They used Lazio's strength to their advantage, and they could have scored more than 2 goals. Personally, in the first half an hour they had so many chances off the counterattack. It was ridiculous. Maricic made a brilliant tackle in the first 15 minutes to stop Vlahovic from scoring. Overall, it was. The first goal conceded, Acerbi, I don't know why he plays all over the pitch. You're a center back. Play in the center. Don't play on the right. Don't play on the left. He should just clear that ball out of bounds. There's no need to clear it to nobody. Poor defending. Peperena, 39 years old. That's what you're going to get. Freaking, I don't want to be rude, but the guy's slow, like molasses. The first goal, he could have maybe attempted to cut off the pass. Make a pass, cut off something. Strakosha should be playing more. I won't take away what he's been able to do this season. Peperena, he's helped Lazio in many ways, but Strakosha needs to be playing more as well. He's not garbage. He's a quality goalkeeper. Our back line just struggled, and Correa's missed chance in the first 10 minutes. If that goes in, the momentum is all different. Like that chance there, Dragowski made. I think Dragowski made a few saves on Immobile, and the part the sequence where Immobile hits the post, he was called offside. If you look at the replay, I think he was onside. If he scores one of his chances, it goes to VAR then to review if he's onside. So, and I think that one of the calls were pretty close. But overall, and the last thing is, fuck Romano. The guy's a fraud. He steals information from other people and recites it, okay? The guy's a fucking piece of shit. Screw him. And anybody who wants to be like Romano will go nowhere in life, okay? There are better sources than Fabrizio Romano and that other idiot Di Marzio, okay? 2 flaws in football. Freaking snakes.
It's just the social media bandwagon, bro. It's
you
got to report the news whether or not it's credible, man. You got to get the news out there on every outlet. The clicks need to come. Before we move on to the next game, just quickly, Vlahovic, a lot of hype around him. Vito, where do you see him moving next year, and why in terms of who can afford it economically? Because I saw someone say, Bruno said he's making the way to join Mourinho. I swear to God, if that price tag is anything north of 30 million on Vlahovic, you can rule Roma out of the equation.
I would rule out Roma too. I personally think that not Roma, Milan would be likely to buy him. They would probably pay 40 million apparently for him. But at the same time, I think it'd be risky for anyone to just go for Vlahovic after 1 year, because we've seen in the last decade quite a few young strikers. They've had great seasons, but when they move elsewhere, they have struggled. So
Piontek.
Piontek is the obvious one. So I don't
Andre
think
Silva.
Patrick Schick at Sampdoria, only now at Bayer Leverkusen he's starting to find his feet again. But I think for a player like Vlahovic, he's been sensational this season, and I hope that Rocco Commisso and the rest of Fiorentina do what they can to keep Vlahovic at the club. And hopefully the Serbian youngster realizes that if he has more continuity at a certain club, he might become a better player himself. And I think both Fiorentina and the Serbian national team, with the legendary midfielder Dragan Stojkovic, now the coach, they might be able to progress further.
Hey, can I add to that? Do you think, Vito, that he's in a situation like Immobile, where Immobile, he bounced the prime example. He bounced from club to club, struggled, and people call him a failure. I don't think he's a failure because it didn't work out with Dortmund or Sevilla. It's like you just said, it didn't work out with the leagues, and he got to Lazio, and he's found the system, a niche. Like it surrounds him, and he got continuity playing season after season, like you just said. Or Vlahovic now is in a similar situation like Immobile, and maybe should look at him and say, hey, maybe I should follow in the same footsteps as Immobile.
Cool.
Pretty much so, because I think of Immobile. He had that great campaign in Serie B when Pescara got promoted. Marco Verratti and Lorenzo Insigne were part of that team, and they've gone on to have, good professional careers. Immobile had a great understanding with Alessio Cerci, the 2013-2014 campaign, and he had a great season. And then those moves overseas stifled his career a fair bit. It took a move to Lazio to find his feet again, and he's going to go down as a Lazio legend. Perhaps he hasn't been able to be prolific for Italy as much as Azzurri fans would like, but I think in terms of a club career, Immobile has shown at Torino and especially with Lazio that he can be a great goal scorer. And probably in Vlahovic's case, that's probably one thing he's got to keep an eye on. Even if he does move somewhere else, especially outside of Italy, and he loses track, he might be able to go somewhere else and find his feet again. Sometimes it's just about being in the right environment, having the right coach, and fitting into the right system, because there aren't as many naturally gifted footballers as they were in previous decades or yesteryear. And I don't think it's a case of being nostalgic or not being a millennial. I think that's just the reality of the situation.
Well said. We're going to go through the next two results super quick so that we can spend the last few minutes of the pod focusing on the result that really mattered this morning and the reason why I was up before the sun. Udinese won, Bologna won, pretty much the mid-table dead game. The only real talking point for me is still Rodrigo de Paul. So I'll just throw it out to Vito because we don't speak with him very often. Where do you think he'll be going next season?
There were some stories about him going to Leeds United at the start of this season. I wonder now with Leeds being in the top half of the Premier League table, would they go for a bid for him? At least he'd be joining his compatriot Marcelo Bielsa there. So if United do purchase him, I think he would fit in well there. Otherwise, if he does stay in Italy, I think he can fit into style play. Just depends, again, like on different podcasts, that whether Inter are willing to pay Udinese the money they want, or if they can negotiate a deal that will be beneficial to both parties. The way Inter plays, and also the way De Paul is as a player now, I think he's got the technical attributes to really succeed at Inter, but I think he'll be able to play in Conte's more rigid system, but also high-intensity approach. So I think the way he's developed as a footballer, I think De Paul would slot in very well with the Nerazzurri.
I think so as well. And I'm sure Alex will agree that if Inter are going to try and compete again on all fronts next season and make a deeper run in the Champions League, that you can't really be spoiled for choice in terms of quality. And for a fact we're trying to get some of your Vecinos or Vidals or Gagliardinis, maybe not all three, but, one or two of them are going to have to move on. There's even talks that maybe Eriksen or Brozovic will have to be sacrificed as well. So, Alex, I think you'll agree getting De Paul in, if the option is there, that we still got to jump on it. Yeah, man.
Yeah, and I know it's going to be a complicated, difficult transfer market. Certainly, there's going to be a challenge not only in buying but also in selling, because the pandemic has affected every club, so you may not be able to get the prices you want for some of those players you mentioned. Now, in the case of someone like Vidal, just simply getting the wages off the books are more important than getting some sort of a transfer fee. But regardless of all the complications with the market, if Inter would somehow find a way to finesse a signing of Rodrigo de Paul, and if they were able to address goalkeeper, then that in itself, I would say, would be a hugely successful transfer market, because I don't think that squad needs a whole lot. If they keep the core together, they can certainly compete for another Scudetto, if not be the favorite to win it. But very, very important, I think, to bring in a player like de Paul would just really add to the quality, and it would be awesome.
Of course, staying on you, Alex, and staying on players that might come to Inter. Torino 1, Verona 1. Some late drama prevents Torino basically wrapping up their safety a few days early. They still look safe for now, just making sure that they don't drop all 3 points on the last game to Benevento now will seem like the priority for them. In terms of Di Marco, I'm more than happy to have him back next season as the backup left wing back. I think he could still start a fair few games. Alex, I think you're more than happy to have him back as well now after the showing he's had for Verona. He's grown from a young prospect in this country to a real tenacious sort of almost leader figure in that club, even though how young he is. So I'm all in for Di Marco coming back to Inter, man.
Yeah, and again, and left wing back, like you said, is important, and Inter in that case could address it with someone who is, an academy product of theirs. If DiMarco were to come back, I think it'd be a great move. He's really, really become dangerous going forward, and it seems to me like in Conte's system, he could be a perfect fit.
Awesome. All right, guys, I thank you so much for your time, but everyone's going to get their say one last time. Milan 3, Juve 0, and, I've been saving this one for last because Pirlo completely embarrassed today. That's the first time Milan's won in Turin in, I can't remember how many years. It's been said a couple of times today, but I just wanted to go around everyone to think, what are your honest thoughts that are going to happen to Juventus for not only the remainder of the season, but next season as well? So, Vito, first of all, what did you think of the match? What do you think of the fallout? And yeah, just overall your thoughts, man, because that's another big topic of conversation at the moment.
I think for Milan, it was a great performance for them. It showed that, when they do have the right spirit in the locker room, they can unite and put in a good performance. They've showed over the last season and even during the previous calendar year that they were capable of making comebacks and triumphing over diversity, if you like. So they're not a team that will lie down easily. There was the banter period where they would just easily concede defeat, but the current squad does not have that mindset. As for Juventus, it's a terrible loss for them to lose to one of the historical rivals, especially on home soil. And Juve, I think, just need a general shake-up. So regardless of the fallout in regards to the whole Super League fiasco, I think in general, Juventus need a big clean-out. They might need to get rid of Cristiano Ronaldo and also Paulo Dybala for the sake of easing the wage bill. And I don't think a player of Cristiano Ronaldo's quality and caliber, despite his 36 years, should be at a team that has little hope of challenging for the Champions League. He still can be prolific elsewhere. And more than anything, too, aside from needing to rebuild the defense because Bonucci and Chiellini aren't getting much younger, they really got to rebuild the midfield. They need someone like Emmanuel Locatelli for starters to be a deep line playmaker. And they got to bring in a few more other creative avenues. I did mention Nicolo Zaniolo, if they would still think of him. But again, he poses a risk. But I think it's more that they need more ball-playing midfielders. I think they've become too obsessed with these box-to-box types, the guys that do the donkey work or the guys that will shield the defense and give the backline protection. But they need guys who can circulate the ball, move it around with confidence, and play delicious through balls to the forwards.
Are they going to make the top 4, Vito?
This season, I don't think so. I think Milan, they still got a few players that can turn a game around, although Juve have the match winners too. I think their weak points are being exposed more than Milan's. With Milan, I think it's right wing that's still a weakness. Juve have more weaknesses. As for top 4, well, Inter on top, obviously. Atalanta 2nd, Napoli 3rd, and I reckon Milan will get 4th.
Awesome, man. Thanks for that prediction. Last shout from Alex Donno. Your reaction to Juve getting pumped this morning? I mean, we've spoken a couple of times this season, and we both thought, they're not going to miss out on Champions League. That sort of shit just doesn't happen. But it looks like it could be on the cards, bro.
Yeah, and it's actually a little painful for me that I wasn't able to enjoy that match properly because I was working during most of it. I wasn't able to put the game on until probably around the 65th, 70th minute. I saw the goals and pretty stunning stuff, especially that Ante Rebic strike. I mean, my God, that was an absolute scorcher. I'm not sure if we all had had the same commentators, because on ESPN Plus in the United States, we had Mark Donaldson and Matteo Bonetti calling it. I think that's a USA exclusive. And the crazy thing about it was that goal came so much out of nowhere that the commentary team it took them like 3 or 4 seconds to realize what happened. Like there was a pause, and then Bonetti is just like, hey, that went in. And then Donaldson was kind of shocked by it. It's hard to believe. You'd mentioned it's been forever since Milan won a game in Torino. I don't think they'd ever won in that particular stadium. And I think that's decisive for Champions League position. I mean, I'll echo what Vito had to say. I think that basically secured top 4 for Milan, and it likely pumps Juventus out of top 4. Now, Inter can still have a say in that, because they do have what's going to be an incredibly important fixture, I think, for Juventus coming up in less than a week's time now. For Inter, it's just going to be more about trying to spoil their season. And, the matchup against Samp felt a little bit like a training match. But I have a feeling Conte is going to put his best 11 and be a little bit more pragmatic against Juventus and really, try and smother them to get a victory and send them out of Champions League. So I'm certainly going to, I know we still have a matchup with Roma coming up midweek before that, but I'm already starting to focus a bit on that Juventus match, because that's going to be very important. Not so much for Inter, but very important for Juve.
Absolutely, and it'll come around quicker than you know it, because the game against Rome is a midweek one, I'm pretty sure. So, There's plenty of culture to come in the next week. Jerry, we'll finish off with you. I'll ask you pretty much straightforward. How happy would you be to see Andrea Agnelli and Juventus fall out of the top 4 next season, man?
Oh, fuck them, man. Honestly, straight up, I wouldn't care less if they didn't make it. But I'm gonna say something here. I think a lot of people are realizing that Milan wasn't as dominant as people think they were. They played a really poor team right now. Like, Juventus is just not good in any facet. Like, they should have never beaten Udinese in the first place last weekend, okay? They haven't been good in who knows how long since they beat Lazio. That was probably their best match in who knows how long, and I think they had another impressive win after that. That was it. But I think maybe Napoli, they looked pretty well against. Yeah, it was against Napoli, the rematch. But their running is not easy as people think. I'm really curious to see how Milan does now against a Torino side who's fighting off relegation, and in Cagliari, who's fighting off relegation as well. Like, these are two teams, probably the two of the hottest teams in the current moment. If you look at their past 5 results, okay, where I believe Cagliari has won 5 in a row and they actually look like a top 10 team right now. And Torino has looked much better in recent time. These are the results I want to see what Milan is able to scrape out. And it wouldn't be surprised if Milan tied or lost these games. And then you have Atalanta to finish the season. And then you go look at Juventus, and their fixtures are not any better. Sassuolo is playing very well right now. Inter is not going to back down. We know that. And then you got Bologna, who can be good on a good day. So I still like to see what's going to happen in the last 3 fixtures. And I know that Lazio is realistically, probably mathematically still alive. They would have to win outright their last 4 matches. But if things play out, who knows? Crazy things have happened. But I'm just curious to see how Milan plays in their next 2 matches, because they're going to have a much harder task compared to what they did today. Because Juventus is just shit in that midfield, and they were purely dominated.
Well, man, considering they have to play each other on the last day, Milan and Atalanta, you guys can still win all your remaining games up until match day 38 and still be in contention on the last day. And as long as you're in with a fighting chance on the last day, you don't need Inter fans to tell you that anything can happen, man. I mean, how much time do you honestly have? But that's all that we're going to have time for today. And I'll go around and say a big thank you to everyone for joining me on Inter Worldwide. I'll stick with you, Jerry, for the time being. Anything that you want to plug, where can people find you?
My work is at Service in Mondinina and the Laziale, where I have some work coming out, 3 takeaways, winners and losers, and that's about it.
Awesome. Thanks, bro. Vito, my friend, where can anybody find your awesome writing?
All right. So people can read my work at Forza Italian Football and listen to me on the weekly podcast as we review the Serie A action for each weekend. I also write for Breaking the Line, so that's more feature writing stuff, longer articles, so you can check out my work there. I also want to thank you again, Anthony, for inviting me onto your podcast, as well as for the viewers who have commented on YouTube, and I thank you for your kind words.
Thank you, brother. You're welcome anytime. And to my friend Alex Donno, you enjoy it, bro. Being a Campione has never felt so good. Thanks for having me on your show this morning. Welcome on to Inter Worldwide anytime. And yeah, just enjoy it overall. Tell people where they can listen to your awesome voice.
And thank you for having me. Congratulations to you as well. Yeah, you can catch Jerry and I on the Calcio Connection podcast. And huge shout out and thank you for joining us. We did a doubleheader today. We went back to back, which was absolutely awesome. You can also check me out daily, primarily covering American sports, but we do mix in some calcio and some soccer, as we call it in North. I believe in Australia you say that as well. That's what we call it in North America. You can check me out daily. It's 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern time in the United States on onsideradio.com. Thank you guys so much.
Awesome. From all of us here at Inter Worldwide, thank you for watching. Leave a like before you exit the video, and Forza Inter. Ciao ragazzi.